Well, life is weird sometimes, isn't it? Last year, because I was so busy with schoolwork, I thought, I'm gonna have to skip my most anticipated video and my box office video, you know, the ones I've done every year since I was 14, but hey, I'll get back to it next year. And now, I basically get to make that exact video that I missed out on, because all the 2020 movies have been pushed to 2021. Again, life is weird sometimes, isn't it? So today, I'm gonna rank the 10 movies that I am personally most looking forward to in 2021. Also, I'm recording this early in the morning, so that's why my voice sounds like this. Now, a few disclaimers here. 1. As you may have noticed, the world's a bit messed up right now, to put it mildly, and no one's exactly sure when it will not be that way, so this list is under the big assumption that these films will actually be released in 2021. Here's hoping. Please. Also, these are only confirmed 2021 movies, so movies that may come out in 2021 but do not have confirmed release dates yet, like Killers of the Flower Moon, the new Scorsese movie, won't be on this list. Also, the Snyder Cut isn't on this list, just because I see that more as a miniseries than a movie, since it's 4 one-hour parts being released separately. Anyway. And finally, these are just the movies that I know about now, because I know in the future someone might come back to this and be like, oh my god, I can't believe he wasn't excited for this awesome indie movie that ended up being the best movie of the year. I probably would be excited for it, I just don't know about it yet, because those can oftentimes sneak up on me and I'm not aware of them right now, or it hasn't been finished yet, or whatever. These are just the films of next year, hopefully, that I know about right now and am most excited for. Alright, enough intro. Let's go. First up, at number 10 is The Eternals. This one, I'll be honest, is mostly here because of my trust in the MCU to produce good, fun movies, because we really don't know much about this, but I expect this will be a good, fun movie. Something else in its favor is an all-star cast. I'm especially excited to see Richard Madden and Kumail Nanjiani in the MCU. Kumail, who's now post Chris Hemsworth's chicken diet. The premise also does sound interesting, looking more into the cosmic side of the MCU, which so far has led to some of the most interesting and fun MCU stories. And again, I'm just excited to see a new property from the MCU, since the MCU does really well with properties that the general public isn't that familiar with. In fact, that's what the whole thing was built on originally. So, I'm hyped to see the introduction of a new set of characters and corner of the MCU. This could move up the list the more we see from it. Currently don't know enough about it to put it above the number 10 spot. Coming in at number 9 is Top Gun Maverick. There's not a ton to say about this one. I like the original Top Gun, so I'm excited to see more of that story. And the trailer actually looks pretty spectacular. I mean, not only do we have the ageless Tom Cruise, who looks like this movie could have been filmed the day after the original one, but the rest of the cast, from returning members to new additions like Ham and Teller, look solid, and the visuals from the trailer look kind of amazing. Those dogfights and action scenes look like they're going to be incredible to see on the big screen. So I'm really hoping by the time this comes out, we'll be able to see it on the big screen. And overall, it just looks like a fitting, fun, exciting follow-up to the original. Looking forward to it. Number 8 is another MCU film, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. In a similar way to the Eternals, this is here because I have faith in the MCU more than anything else, since we've seen very little from this. But, on top of that, I'm really excited to see what kind of action this film has. I think there'll be a big focus on that, and the resulting kung fu martial arts action could be some of the best MCU action since The Winter Soldier. Plus, seeing the real Mandarin on screen is going to be cool, and the rest of the cast looks great so far, and by all accounts, it's a cool character, so yeah. Excited for a new hero to be introduced in Marvel's Phase 4, who will presumably be joining a new version of the Avengers down the line. At number 7, and this one is a little bit tentative for me because I do think there's a chance that this could be pretty average, but I'm holding out hope. No Time to Die. I mean, I love a kick-ass action movie more than most, and the Craig James Bond movies have had their extremely kick-ass entries. The problem is, they've also had just as many not as kick-ass entries. But my hope is, with this being Craig's last film in the series, they'll really give it their all to make this a fitting finale. The trailer does look good. Rami Malek seems like the most obvious choice for a Bond villain ever, so everything is pointing in the right direction. I guess what I'm saying is, I wouldn't be surprised if this movie isn't amazing, but I think there's a good chance that it could be, and I'm crossing my fingers for it. At number 6 is Dune, which I'll level with you here. I haven't read the book, I haven't seen the original, and to be honest, I want to keep it that way to go into this movie not really knowing what to expect. But why it's so high on my list? A, the trailer looks great. B, the cast, I mean, Jesus, look at that cast. And C, Denis Villeneuve is one of the best directors working today. I hope to get through his whole filmography before this film, but Arrival and Blade Runner 2049 are two truly epic, thought-provoking, gorgeous sci-fi films. And this looks to be following in those footsteps. An epic sci-fi film made by an incredible filmmaker. Why wouldn't I be excited for this? For the number 5 spot, I've got Spider-Man 3. Something Home, probably. Spider-Man Homecoming is definitely one of my favorite MCU films. Far From Home, while not as good, was still really enjoyable. And so if this was just a typical third MCU Spidey film, I'd be really excited for it. But from the reports, it sounds like this is going to be an absolutely insane Spider-Man film involving the multiverse. It sounds like we're going to get crossovers from the other Spider-Man series in here, with Jamie Foxx's Electro and potentially Alfred Molina and who knows who else. So yeah, That's pretty damn exciting. Again, the whole Peter Parker high school and then typical Spidey adventure stuff has been great, but now we've seen that in the MCU. 2 movies worth of it, actually. And while the MCU has done it very well, to switch things up for this 3rd film so that it doesn't start to feel stale, especially now that the groundwork has been so well established, I think is a great move. Great cast, great director, definitely the MCU film I'm most excited for next year. Partly because I think it'll be great, and partly because I'm really curious to see what the hell they're planning on doing here. This is starting to feel almost like the lead up to Infinity War or Endgame, in the sense that those were 2 of a small selection of MCU films where I really felt like I didn't know what crazy stuff was going to happen. So let's hope Sony doesn't ruin all the surprises in the trailers, as they have a tendency to do. At the number 4 spot, I've got The King's Man. This one is interesting for me, because Kingsman: The Secret Service is one of my favorite films, Kingsman: The Golden Circle is a film, but I do really love this world and these characters, and so a Kingsman 3 would still have been very high on my list, possibly 1 or 2. However, this isn't Kingsman 3, but rather a prequel, which initially I found an odd direction to take this series, and it isn't necessarily anything I think anyone was thinking they wanted to see while watching the other 2 films. But watching the trailers for this, I'm really on board with what this looks like it's going to be. Matthew Vaughn is coming back to direct, which is a great sign, since despite his last outing, I still think he's a phenomenal director. And the fact that this premise is a bit unexpected does make me think that it's something he's really passionate about. Like, a Kingsman 3 is the obvious sure way to go commercially, but the fact that they're taking this odd detour that people didn't really expect says to me that they must think they've got something really worth exploring here. And like I mentioned, the trailers do look really good. This could be a good way to breathe new life into the series. So, while I would rather have seen a Kingsman 3, this prequel does still look like it's going to be a ton of fun and could reinvigorate the series. Plus, I'd rather see a passionate take on this than just a phoned-in take on a 3rd Kingsman film. At number 3 is The Suicide Squad. Funnily enough, the highest placement of a superhero film on this list. This movie just screams badass crazy fun to me. Some of these films you can think, yeah, it could be good, could be bad. This one, I genuinely have a hard time imagining it being bad. Every piece of news I hear about this gets me more hyped. James Gunn writing and directing, the characters returning from the first film mixed with new characters, what the tone and style of the film seems to be, this darkly funny R-rated vibe. I just think there's a ton of cinematic potential in the concept of the Suicide Squad, and James Gunn is 100% the guy to squeeze that potential out and deliver what's sure to be an absolute rollercoaster ride in the cinema. I know I'm hyping this up a lot, and if this movie turns out to be terrible, I'm sure someone will clip this and insert the Curb Your Enthusiasm music over its Rotten Tomatoes score, but that's how confident I am this is going to be a blast. So, absolutely can't wait for this one. Coming in at the runner-up spot, anyone who knows me knew this was going to be high up, Mission Impossible 7. The Mission Impossible films have just been on an absolutely brilliant run recently. 3 is pretty solid, but then 4, 5, and 6 are each some of the best action films of the last decade, easily. They're fun, tense, exciting, well-made, fantastic spy action films. So of course I'm excited for what I remember being sold as the beginning of the end. This and Mission Impossible 8 are kind of going to be 2-parters, sort of Infinity War Endgame style, to wrap up the series. So like I mentioned with No Time to Die, I'm assuming they're just going to go all out and break out every trick and stunt and cool moment in the book to cap off this legendary series properly. And oh man, am I hyped for it. I mean, I'm hyped just to see what crazy stuff Tom Cruise does this time around, let alone the rest of the film, that presumably is also going to be awesome. Plus, Haley Atwell, Pom Klementieff, and Nicholas Hoult are all joining the cast, along with the cast of Mission Impossible 6 returning, and a couple of familiar faces from back in the day popping up. This just has amazing written all over it. Now before we get to number 1, here are some more films that I'm excited for next year, but just not quite enough to make the actual top 10. Godzilla vs. Kong. I like Godzilla 2014, I like Kong Skull Island. Didn't see Godzilla 2, but from what I've heard, it's fine. But the idea of 2 of the most iconic movie monsters, that are also enormous, duking it out, does sound fun. I worry that this could end up being a situation where the actual fight scene is really cool, and the re-upload of that on YouTube gets like 20 million views, but the rest of the film is just whatever. But hey, I'm not expecting an intellectual masterpiece here. It's a very simple and basic reason I'm excited for this. Godzilla and King Kong punching each other does sound awesome. Speaking of movies with simple premises that you know what you're getting into when you buy a ticket, Fast and Furious 9. This is a movie I fully expect to see once in the cinema, have a great fun time watching, and then never really think about or rewatch again. And that's all I want from this. That's what the last few Fast and Furious films have been for me, and I'm totally fine with that. They give me a fun 2 hours with a big bucket of popcorn. That's all I'm looking for. And this one looks like it's going to be following that trend. Venom, Let There Be Carnage. I love that that's the official title they're going for. I mean, I didn't think Venom 2018 was great. In fact, I thought it was pretty not great. But I also remember thinking there's a lot of potential here. There's some really good Eddie Brock Venom stuff in that film, and if they can focus on that with what I assume will be at the very least a more memorable villain, this could be really interesting. Uncharted. I haven't played the games, but I know what they're about, and this basically seems like a chance to see a new Indiana Jones film in a way. So despite the video game movie track record not being good, I'm in. Black Widow. I know you might be surprised that this isn't on the main list. I'm still definitely excited to see this and to get back to the MCU. It's just not a movie I'm super excited for. I feel like I already know what's going to happen and how it's going to make me feel. I could be wrong, and I'd love to be proven wrong, but as of right now, it's definitely a film I'm excited to see, but not, like, dying to see. And finally, Chaos Walking. Not super invested in this, but the trailer looks pretty interesting, so that is what I'm looking forward to. And finally, my number one most anticipated film of 2021 is in fact Last Night in Soho. This pick really shows how much I love Edgar Wright, because this movie doesn't necessarily have a crazy cast or anything, we know very little about it, and it's a horror film, which is potentially my least favorite genre of film. And yet I'm still so excited for it, because I'm so excited for a new movie from my favorite director. Baby Driver and the Cornetto trilogy are four of my favorite films ever. Scott Pilgrim, while not one of my personal favorites, is still great, and yeah, Edgar Wright has not had a dud yet. Not just not a dud, his worst film in my opinion is still awesome. The brief premise we do have does sound interesting, something to do with time travel of some sort. It's a psychological horror film, not just a straight-up horror film, so a really well-made psychological horror film with an interesting concept, which based on Wright's past will probably have some comedy in it. Getting some strong Get Out vibes here, which isn't necessarily indicative of what the final film would be like, but it's certainly not a bad sign. The cast also is solid, don't get me wrong, but yeah, Edgar Wright is my favorite director, and I cannot wait to get another look into that man's mind with Last Night in Soho. So, those are the films that I'm most excited for in 2021. That will hopefully come out. Again, fingers crossed. Do you agree or disagree with my list? Let me know all of your thoughts down below in the comments. While you're at it, be sure to like this video, check out my Instagram and Twitter at BHL_Hudson, check out this podcast about movies and TV and whatnot I do with a friend of mine, it's called The Poorly Planned Podcast, and subscribe for more videos like the one you just watched. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.